The day of the wedding had finally arrived, a day I had imagined countless times in my mind, a day brimming with joy, hope, and the promise of a lifetime together with the woman I loved. From the moment I opened my eyes that morning, a wave of emotions flooded me. Excitement, anticipation, and a nervous energy that made my heart race like it never had before. This day was not just a celebration. It was the culmination of years of memories, shared dreams, and countless moments that had brought us to this point. I was ready to pledge my life and love to her, surrounded by our family, friends, and all those who mattered most. The venue was nothing short of breathtaking. We had chosen an outdoor garden setting, a place that seemed pulled from a fairy tale. Towering trees with leaves gently swaying in the soft spring breeze framed the space, while vibrant flowers bloomed in bursts of color along every pathway and corner. The air was fragrant with the scent of roses, jasmine, and blooming lilacs, a natural perfume that filled the space with a sense of tranquility and romance. White chairs were arranged in neat rows, facing a simple but elegant altar adorned with delicate lace and fresh flowers, where we would exchange our vows. The setting sun was just beginning to cast a golden glow, promising a perfect evening ahead. Guests arrived in a steady stream, dressed in their finest attire, their faces animated with excitement and warm smiles. I caught glimpses of my parents, their eyes shining with pride and happiness, a mix of tears and laughter on their faces. Friends who had stood by us in good times and bad hugged each other and exchanged stories, filling the atmosphere with laughter and shared joy. The murmur of conversations intertwined with soft background music from a string quartet added an electric sense of warmth and intimacy to the gathering. As I stood at the altar, dressed in a suit that felt both comfortable and formal, I felt a calm determination settle over me, a quiet reassurance that this was exactly where I was meant to be. The nervous flutter in my chest was tempered by the overwhelming gratitude I felt, to be about to marry someone I truly loved, with the people I cared about surrounding me. My best man gave me a subtle nod of encouragement, grounding me further as I waited for the moment to begin. The music shifted subtly, signaling the arrival of the bride. All heads turned toward the entrance, and my breath caught as she appeared. She was breathtaking, radiant, wrapped in a flowing white gown that caught the light with every step, her hair crowned with fresh flowers that matched the garden's beauty. Her eyes met mine, and in that instant, the world seemed to shrink until it was just the two of us, suspended in a perfect bubble of connection and anticipation. Every step she took toward me was laden with meaning, a journey that carried the weight of our love, our history, and the future we were about to begin. The officiant's voice broke the silence, guiding us through the ceremony, the words carrying profound significance as we exchanged our vows. Every promise I spoke was heartfelt and sincere, a testament to my commitment to her and the life we were forging together. I looked into her eyes as I pledged my loyalty and devotion, a moment that felt sacred, raw, and utterly transformative. The guests watched quietly, their faces reflecting the depth of the occasion, some smiling with tears in their eyes, others simply captivated by the beauty of our union. As we reached the part of the ceremony where the kiss would seal our vows, anticipation built in the room like a living thing. The collective breath of those present seemed to hold suspended time itself, waiting for that perfect gesture to crystallize our commitment publicly. I felt my heart surge with emotion, ready to embrace the future with her, to mark the start of a shared journey filled with love and partnership. Laughs and whispers filled the background as the string quartet played a soft melody. The glow of the setting sun bathed everyone in warm, golden light, enhancing the ethereal quality of the moment. I reached out to take her hand, feeling the warmth and tenderness between us, a silent affirmation of our connection. The joy, the hope, the belief in forever, it all felt real, within reach, and overwhelmingly beautiful. Around us, the guests smiled and watched with love and expectation. Children fidgeted in their seats while elders leaned forward attentively. My parents shared a glance, their eyes shining with tears of happiness. Friends exchanged knowing nods, quietly celebrating the love and commitment being shared before their eyes. It was a perfect moment, seemingly untouched by time or trouble, an orchestration of everything good in the world coming together in one harmonious event. Every detail of the wedding, the flowers, the decorations, the smiles, the vows, was imbued with significance. It was as if the universe itself conspired to make this day special. And yet, beneath the surface of this idyllic scene, something within me had begun to shift, a quiet unease that I could not yet name. But in that moment, before the kiss, with love so vividly alive around me, I clung to hope and joy with all my strength, believing that this day would open the door to the rest of our lives, a lifetime bound in love and truth. In the days and weeks leading up to our wedding, a subtle but persistent unease began creeping into my mind, clouding what should have been a season of pure joy and anticipation. At first, the signs were faint and easily dismissed. The way my bride's phone buzzed insistently in her hand, the quickness with which she hid messages whenever I entered the room, the vague explanations she gave for sudden absences. Small details that would not have registered much to an outsider began to accumulate in my thoughts, gnawing steadily at the foundation of trust one had built with her. I remember one particular afternoon when I noticed the bridesmaids gathered tightly in a corner, speaking in hushed tones and casting furtive glances my way. They quickly dispersed when I approached, their smiles a little too bright, their laughter a little too forced. I couldn't shake the uncomfortable feeling that something was happening behind my back, the seeds of betrayal that I desperately wished were not true. At first, I explained it all away as the stress and chaos that always seems to accompany wedding planning. Tensions run high, nerves fray, people sometimes behave unpredictably. I told myself that these were just the usual jitters, and that my bride's love for me was unwavering. But deep inside, a quiet whisper of doubt grew louder each day, a question that I could neither admit to myself nor voice aloud. Was she being truthful? Was there something going on that I didn't know? The tension inside me became unbearable one evening when a close friend, caught between loyalty to both of us and a desire to protect me, decided to break the silence. Pulling me aside with eyes full of sympathy and hesitation, she shared what she had overheard. Fragments of conversations filled with coded words, secret rendezvous hinted at in whispered messages, proof of a relationship between my bride and one of her bridesmaids that no one else knew about. Her voice trembled as she spoke, knowing the devastation such news would bring, but guided by a fierce protectiveness. The shock hit me like a physical blow. My first instinct was disbelief, a desperate hope that what she was saying was wrong, that these were misunderstandings or cruel gossip. Yet, despite my denial, the pieces began to fit together too clearly. I was forced to confront the possibility that the woman I was about to marry was hiding a betrayal deeper than I could have imagined. In the days that followed, I found myself obsessively searching for proof, something tangible to confirm or refute the nightmare unfolding in my mind. Late into the night, I scoured her messages and social media, trying desperately not to see what I eventually had no choice but to confront. Photos she'd hoped I'd never find, texts filled with affection for someone else, and dates marked in secret meetings I had never been told about. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming. Every moment of joy I had imagined for this wedding began to feel like a painful lie. I vacillated between anger and profound sadness, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with this new, painful reality. The betrayal was not just about infidelity. It was about being deceived by the person I had trusted most, and by the very bridesmaid who was supposed to support us both. Despite the pain, I made a conscious decision to bury my agonizing doubts deep inside as the wedding day approached. Amid all the preparations, amidst family gatherings and last-minute details, I maintained a calm facade. I told myself that this would pass, that maybe the truth was not as dire as I feared, and that the love we shared would overcome all obstacles. But beneath the surface, I was crumbling, carrying a heavy secret that threatened to destroy everything. Each moment of the wedding day was suffused with tension. As I prepared to walk down the aisle, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. The smile I wore was thin and fragile, barely covering the storm raging within. As the guests gathered and my bride descended toward me, radiant and apparently blissful, I grappled with the crashing waves of betrayal and disbelief. The looming moment before the first kiss, the symbol of our union, felt unbearably heavy. I knew that I could no longer ignore the truth hiding beneath the beauty and smiles of this day. The person I loved and the woman I was about to marry was not who I thought she was. And standing beside her, as her bridesmaid, was the person with whom she had shared a secret that would change everything. In that charged, fragile moment, a decision crystallized in my heart. I could not let this betrayal stand in silence. The truth, no matter how painful, had to be revealed before the vows were sealed with a kiss. The moment I chose to act, to reveal the affair to everyone present, would forever alter the course of our lives and the memories of this day. This discovery and the emotional roller coaster that accompanied it were no longer whispers in the shadows. They were a reality that demanded to be faced, a painful truth that set the stage for confrontation, heartbreak, and, ultimately, the search for healing and justice. The moment I stepped forward to take the microphone was electric, charged with a storm of emotions that coursed through me like a wildfire. The entire wedding ceremony, once alive with laughter, music, and hopeful anticipation, came to an abrupt halt as every eye in the crowd fixed itself on me. The gentle melodies faded into silence. Hushed whispers dissolved, replaced by a thick, expectant stillness. In that intense quiet, I knew the truth I carried could no longer be buried beneath the surface of smiles and celebration. It demanded to be heard, raw and unfiltered. My hands trembled slightly, and my voice wavered at first, crackling with the weight of betrayal and heartache. But as I looked out at the sea of familiar faces, friends, family, and loved ones, I found a roar of courage rising from deep within. I could no longer be silent. I opened my heart and laid bare the painful truth that my bride, the woman I had chosen to spend my life with, had been unfaithful. Not with a stranger from some distant, unknown place, but with someone close to us, her bridesmaid, who stood by her side with smiles so carefully practiced, yet stained with betrayal. The reaction was immediate, visceral, and electric. A wave of gasps rolled through the crowd, mingling with murmurs of shock and disbelief. Faces paled, jaws clenched, and eyes widened as the reality crashed down with unforgiving force. I watched as expressions flickered between horror, sympathy, confusion, and disbelief, transforming the atmosphere from one of joyous harmony to tense dissonance. The delicate dream of a perfect wedding was shattered in an instant, replaced by the harsh glare of truth laid bare. My bride's face changed before me, shifting from initial confusion to a pale mask of horror, then to a silence that screamed louder than words ever could. The carefully maintained composure she had worn since morning crumbled at the edges, revealing the raw weight of guilt and fear beneath. No defense could withstand the force of exposure. Beside her, the bridesmaid's smile faltered, her eyes dropping to the floor as the room's judgment settled on her like a heavy, suffocating fog. In that moment, the delicate web of lies and secrets, once hidden behind smiles and whispered conversations, was utterly unraveled. The betrayal was undeniable. Conversations stopped, and a thick silence enveloped us, broken only by stifled sobs or breaths caught in shocked throats. Many guests exchanged glances, unsure how to process the sudden rupture of the wedding's joyous celebration. Some looked down, trembling with sympathy. Others whispered quietly, wrestling with the reality they had just been forced to confront. The feeling of being exposed, vulnerable, but also empowered overwhelmed me. Speaking out in front of all these people was terrifying. But the alternative, staying silent, pretending everything was fine while my heart bled quietly, was unbearable. I refused to allow deceit and betrayal to define this moment or my life. I claimed my voice back with trembling but resolute determination. This declaration was not merely an accusation. It was a statement that I would not be diminished by lies, and that honesty must reign, no matter the cost. The atmosphere shifted irrevocably. The ceremony, which had been so carefully orchestrated to celebrate love and union, came to an abrupt and irrevocable end. The symbolic kiss, the moment designed to seal our vows and begin our life together, never happened. Instead, stunned silence and fractured emotions filled the space where joy had once blossomed. Guests slowly began to disperse, many with heavy hearts and tear-filled eyes. Whispers swirled like autumn leaves caught in a restless wind, some offering words of support to me, others unsure how to confront their own shock or what to say. The betrayal at the heart of the wedding rocked the foundations of relationships, turning friends into strangers and rewriting what had felt unbreakable. The bridesmaid and bride retreated into a silence that spoke volumes. No explanations, no apologies, just the cold acknowledgement of what had been exposed. Despite the heartbreak and chaos, an unexpected and profound sensation of liberation warmed me from within. By revealing the truth, I reclaimed control over my story, refusing to be a victim hidden in the shadows. The courage it took to speak openly about betrayal set me on a path toward healing and renewal. The moment of revelation marked not only the end of a chapter filled with lies and pain, but also the painful yet crucial beginning of a future forged in honesty and self-respect. In that charged, raw moment before the eyes of everyone I cared about, I found strength I never knew I had. I stood firm amid the ruins of deceit, embracing the truth as a beacon to guide me forward. Though the journey ahead was uncertain and painful, I knew I was no longer trapped by silence. I had spoken my truth, and in doing so, I had begun to carve out a new life, one built not on illusions, but on courage, resilience, and hope. The immediate aftermath of my public confrontation was nothing short of a seismic upheaval, the kind of emotional and social rupture that no one expects but that shakes the very core of your existence. The wedding, once a vibrant tableau of love, laughter, and hope, was left in ruins, a jarring contrast to the joyous celebration it was meant to be. The event that was supposed to unite two families and two souls instead became the crucible in which trust was shattered and relationships fractured beyond repair. As the crowd began to disperse, the air remained thick with unspoken tension and stunned silence. Families who had gathered with smiles on their faces and hearts full of goodwill now wrestled with the shock of betrayal exposed under the unforgiving spotlight of public scrutiny. Some guests approached me quietly, offering warm embraces or whispered words of solidarity. Those moments of kindness were lifelines amid the chaos. Others lingered at a hesitant distance, caught somewhere between compassion and discomfort, unsure how to navigate a situation so raw and painful. The ripple effect extended far beyond that day. My bride and the bridesmaid, once inseparable friends sharing secrets and laughter, vanished from my life as quickly as the trust between us had been destroyed. Their silence was a sharp reminder of the void left in the wake of deceit. Conversations that had flowed freely before now faltered or ceased altogether. Mutual friends found themselves divided, torn between loyalty and denial, often retreating from the conflict altogether. Emotionally, I was engulfed by a torrent of feelings that seemed to surge and crash without warning. There was an agonizing grief, not only over the loss of a relationship I had once cherished, but over the dismantling of the future I had envisioned. Dreams I had nurtured were suddenly fragments scattered in the wind. Anger burned fiercely beneath moments of numb shock, and waves of loneliness settled deeply, despite being surrounded by people who cared. I questioned everything, my own judgment, the authenticity of the love I thought I shared, and whether I could ever trust again. In this maelstrom of emotion, I sought refuge where I could find it. Therapy became a sanctuary, a place where I could unravel the knotted threads of betrayal without fear of judgment. The sessions were both cathartic and challenging, forcing me to confront painful truths and to rebuild a fractured sense of self. I learned that betrayal, while devastating, did not define my worth or my future. Slowly, with the help of professional guidance, I began to reconstruct my identity not as a victim but as a survivor, a person capable of healing and growth. Recovery was not linear. Some days were marked by progress filled with hope and renewed strength, others by regression steeped in doubt and sorrow. The process involved relearning how to trust, how to open my heart without fear, and how to set boundaries that preserved my emotional health. I reconnected with passions and friendships that had been neglected, grounding myself in activities and people that reinforced my sense of stability and joy. Sharing my experience openly proved to be another pillar of my healing journey. Speaking honestly with trusted friends, and later with support groups who had faced similar heartbreaks, helped dissolve the shame and isolation that betrayal can breed. In those exchanges, I found community, validation, and hope, reminders that my pain was real but not insurmountable, and that from the ashes of hurt, resilience could bloom. Though the scars of that day remain etched within me, they no longer govern who I am or what I believe I deserve. I emerged stronger, not in spite of my pain but because of it, a person shaped by empathy, wisdom, and renewed self-respect. The ending of my marriage, painful as it was, opened the door to new possibilities. Possibilities rooted in truth and authentic connection. The future that once seemed shattered is now filled with cautious optimism. I understand more deeply what it means to love and be loved with honesty. The betrayal that once threatened to define my story has instead become a transformative chapter, one of courage, self-discovery, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit can find light and hope. The arrival of the wedding day was an emotional crucible unlike anything I had ever experienced before. To the outside world, it was a day meticulously planned and eagerly anticipated, a celebration of love, unity, and new beginnings. Every detail had been attended to with care. The invitations sent months in advance, the gorgeous floral arrangements that blanketed the venue with color and fragrance, the elegant table settings gleaming under the soft glow of string lights, and the carefully chosen music that rose and fell like the perfect score to a lifelong love story. But beneath this beautiful surface, I was carrying a deep and painful secret, a weight that threatened to unravel everything. As dawn broke, I awoke with a flutter of nerves, tempered not by normal wedding day excitement, but by an undercurrent of dread and sadness. The discovery of my bride's affair in the days prior had left a raw, aching wound that pulsed beneath every breath I took. The suit I dressed in felt heavier than it should have, almost like armor that I donned reluctantly to face the world and the monumental task ahead. Each stitch seemed woven not just with fabric, but with the fraught mix of hope, fear, instability, and a desperate desire for truth. In the silence of the early morning, alone in my room, I could feel the whirlpool of memories and doubts spinning tightly around my heart. Faces flashed before me. Smiles, laughter, thousands of moments I had cherished suddenly cast in doubt. The messages I found, the secret meetings I pieced together, they all converged into a jagged mosaic of betrayal and lost trust. I questioned myself endlessly. Did I ignore the signs? Could I have stopped this before it grew so deep? How much of what I believed was a lie? Outside my quiet sanctuary, the world moved with relentless joy and excitement. Friends and family buzzed with anticipation, their eyes bright with happiness, their voices ringing with laughter and warm congratulations. The division between their jubilation and the storm inside me was stark and isolating. I smiled and nodded, exchanged pleasantries, and greeted delighted guests. But inside, I was fractured, struggling to hold myself together while the landscape of my life shifted beneath me. Every moment felt like balancing on a precipice. The intricate dance of the day, the greetings, the photos, the rehearsed rituals, pulled me back and forth between outward calm and inner turmoil. The joyous chatter and jubilant faces felt surreal, an alien world that had no place for the pain I carried. The weight of secrecy was suffocating, yet I resolved that the ceremony would proceed, not only because of the expectations and hopes placed upon us, but because, despite the ache in my heart, a part of me still clung to the possibility of honoring the commitments we were about to make. As the guests took their seats and the soft music filled the air, signaling the start of the ceremony, my senses sharpened, every detail magnified. The lowered voices, the glimmering sunlight filtering through trees, the scent of blooming flowers mingling with the faint notes of the string quartet. And then she appeared, my bride, radiant beyond measure, her presence commanding the attention and love of every person gathered. The vision of her in a flowing white gown, poised and graceful, struck me anew, and with it, the cruel contrast of the secrets hidden beneath the surface. The officiant's voice softened the room, carrying us through the sacred rituals and promises, but within me, a quiet storm raged. The vows I spoke were honest words, a fragile attempt to hold on to love even as it faltered beneath the weight of truth. Each word was laced with pain and longing, an offering to the future I once dreamt of building with her. And as our hands clasped, warm and trembling, I felt the agonizing contradiction of hope and heartbreak intertwining in that fleeting connection. Then came the moment that hanging in the balance had been waiting for. The kiss that would seal our union and mark the beginning of our shared life. The entire space held its breath in anticipation. The air shimmered with expectation, and time itself seemed to pause, balanced on the fragile edge between joy and devastation. And in that moment, the invisible burden I carried crystallized clearly inside me. I could no longer stay silent, could no longer let deceit silently bind us together. The decision to break the silence came swiftly and with an unyielding conviction. As the time for the kiss approached, so did the reckoning I had long postponed. The truth demanded to be heard, before vows were sealed and promises eternal. The arrival of this day was not merely about celebration. It had become the battleground where love's illusions clashed with harsh reality, and where I would forge a new pathway, one grounded not in lies but in honesty and courage. The wedding day was the turning point in a story that began with dreams, but would now be rewritten through the painful clarity of truth. It was a day marked simultaneously by fragile beauty and inevitable confrontation. A day that would forever define my past, present, and future in ways I had never imagined but now had no choice but to face. The final moments before the kiss were charged with an almost unbearable tension, a crescendo of everything that had led to this day, and everything the final moments before the kiss were charged with an almost unbearable tension, a crescendo of everything that had led to this day, and everything I had discovered that threatened to tear it all apart. The ceremony had unfolded with its flawless beauty, the soft rustling of the guests settling into their seats, the delicate notes of the string quartet weaving through the air, the gentle sunlight filtering through the trees, casting dappled light over the floral arrangements. On the surface, it was the perfect wedding scene, a moment suspended in time, a picture of love and unity for all to see. As I stood at the altar, heart pounding, the world around me seemed to blur and sharpen all at once. I was acutely aware of every detail. The polished wood beneath my feet, the rustle of fabric as the guests shifted, the expectant gazes locked on us. My bride appeared radiant, her eyes gleaming softly with anticipation as she moved gracefully toward me. Every step she took seemed to carry the weight of countless shared memories, dreams, and promises. Though I now knew how shadowed those promises were by betrayal. The air was thick with anticipation as the officiant prepared to close the ceremony. The final words hung heavy, words that I knew should have echoed hope and eternal commitment, but instead stirred inside me a turbulent storm of conflicting emotions. The kiss that was to seal our vows was supposed to be the joyous culmination of love's promise, a moment of unity and shared futures. But beneath the calm, a fierce urgency pulsed within me, a desperate need to shatter the illusion before it was forever cemented. In those suspended seconds, I wrestled fiercely with my emotions. The pain of betrayal pressed hard against my chest, a heavy weight that no amount of hope or denial could lighten. I felt my lips tremble, my breath hitch as the realization struck that this moment, meant for love and beginnings, had to become the moment of truth and reckoning. The hearts and eyes of everyone gathered were upon us. The world held its breath, expecting romance and joy. I knew I couldn't let them leave with lies hanging between us. My gaze met hers across the altar, eyes filled with a mixture of joy and something I now knew were lies she wanted to keep hidden. The bridesmaid, standing silently beside her, shared an uneasy glance, betraying the secret undercurrent that pulsed in the room. I could no longer carry the burden of betrayal alone. The secret had become an unbearable weight too large for my heart. With a voice just barely above a whisper, trembling yet resolute, I stepped forward into the center of the ceremony's focus and raised the microphone. A gasp rippled through the gathering. Anticipation twisted suddenly into a gasp of shock and confusion. The room went silent in an instant. I took a deep breath, willing my voice steady, and then I spoke, words spilling out that shattered the illusion. I revealed the heartbreaking truth about the affair, about the betrayal by the very woman I was to marry and the bridesmaid who had stood by her side that day. The crowd's reaction was immediate and electric. Faces turned pale, eyes widened, and a ripple of murmurs coursed through the guests. Shock, disbelief, and sorrow painted the room with an undeniable heaviness. The bride's face drained of color, her smile faltering as the layers of her carefully maintained calm peeled away. The bridesmaid averted her gaze, guilt and shame flashing in her eyes as the truth lay bare for all to see. Every element of the perfect wedding crumbled in that instant. The delicate balance of hope and love shattered like fragile glass, scattering in fragments across the aisle. The collective breath of the guests caught in a frozen moment suspended between confusion and heartbreak. Some muttered prayers, others stared with tears shimmering in their eyes, all grappling with the sudden rupture of what they believed to be a celebration of love. Despite the agony in my heart, I stood firm, feeling an unexpected surge of strength. I had reclaimed my voice, my dignity, and my right to speak truth in a moment that demanded honesty above all. Though vulnerable, I refused to be silenced by deceit, and I refused to let the foundation of this marriage be built on lies. The love I once believed in had been exposed as a shadow, and I would not glamorize a future built on betrayal. The ceremony could not continue. The long-awaited kiss, the symbolic seal of our union, never occurred. Instead, the wedding ended in stunned silence, fractured and forever changed by the revelation. Guests slowly began to stir, conversations murmuring in hushed and sorrowful tones. For many, the joyful spectacle had turned into a painful reckoning, and the pathways between friendships, families, and hearts diverged in uncertainty. That sacred moment, the one meant to unite two souls, became the moment where truth shattered illusion. It was a painful crucible, but also a necessary one. For me, the revelation was not only about ending a deception, but about reclaiming the possibility of an honest and authentic future, no matter how painful the present. The final moments before the kiss were the fulcrum that tipped my life from hopeful promise to painful clarity, and ultimately, the beginning of my journey toward healing and renewal. The moment I stepped forward to take the microphone was charged with an overwhelming mix of dread, courage, and a desperate need for truth. The wedding ceremony, which had been flowing like a harmonious symphony of love and hope, suddenly felt as if it were shattering into silence and tension. All eyes turned toward me, their collective breath held as if sensing that something profound and out of the ordinary was about to unfold. The laughter, the music, and the smiles faded away, replaced by a thick hush that swallowed the garden in a blanket of stunned anticipation. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the microphone to my lips. For a brief moment, it felt as if the world stopped moving. The gentle breeze that rustled through the leaves, the distant murmur of the string quartet, and the excited whispers of guests all faded beneath the pounding of my own heart. My voice wavered at first, fragile and uncertain, as the weight of what I was about to say bore down on me. Then, gathering strength from the honest fire burning inside me, I steadied myself and began to speak. I revealed the secret I had held tightly in the days before, the indisputable truth that my bride, the woman I was about to marry, had betrayed me, not with a stranger, but with one of her closest friends, her bridesmaid, who was standing beside her in that very moment. The words spilled out painfully but clearly, each syllable breaking the silence and sending ripples of shock through the crowd. This was no longer a whispered rumor or a hidden suspicion. It was a truth laid bare before all our loved ones, undeniable and irrevocable. The immediate reaction was electric and uncontainable. Gasps exploded around me like thunderclaps, faces drained of color, and eyes widened in disbelief and hurt. A murmur of quiet shock spread among the guests, mingling with heavy breaths and stunned silence. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some covering their mouths in disbelief, others wiping away tears or staring in disbelief. The atmosphere that had been so warm and celebratory moments before now felt heavy with sorrow and tension. My bride's face transformed before the crowd. The radiant joy she had worn with such confidence flickered and then faded into an expression of pale shock and fear. For the first time that day, her mask dropped, revealing the bare vulnerability beneath. Her eyes, which moments ago held anticipation and happiness, now flickered with pain and guilt. She said nothing at first, her silence a response far more powerful than any words could have been. The bridesmaid, once vibrant and smiling as if she belonged fully to the celebration, now avoided anyone's eyes, her head bowed in quiet shame. The betrayal was no longer a hidden wound but an open fracture in the hearts of all who had witnessed the ceremony. The delicate tapestry of love, friendship, and trust that had been woven over time was torn in an instant. Conversations faltered, glances darted nervously, and groups formed and reformed as guests struggled to process this sudden upheaval. Some whispered words of consolation to me, offering gentle support and comfort. Others grappled with their shock silently, unsure how to respond when confronted with such raw and painful honesty in what was meant to be a joyful gathering. Despite the flood of emotions swirling around me, I felt an unexpected clarity and strength rising from within. Speaking the truth aloud was both terrifying and liberating. It was my act of reclaiming dignity, a refusal to be silenced or diminished by betrayal. In that moment, vulnerability became my armor, and courage my shield. I made it clear that honesty and respect were not optional, and that the foundation of any relationship must be built on truth, no matter how painful. The revelation changed everything. The ceremony could not continue as planned. The kiss, the symbolic union meant to bind us forever, was never shared. Instead, the event dissolved into stunned silence, tears, and fractured emotions. Guests began to disperse slowly, some lingering with murmurs of disbelief, others retreating into private conversations heavy with sympathy and sorrow. What should have been a celebration of new beginnings had transformed into a moment of reckoning and heartbreak. The public exposure of betrayal not only shattered the immediate moment but reverberated through the lives of everyone present. Friendships strained or ended, family dynamics shifted, and relationships that had seemed strong were irrevocably altered. The bridesmaid and bride disappeared from my life, retreating into silence and distance, leaving me surrounded by the wreckage of broken trust and scattered dreams. Though it was the darkest moment I had ever faced, it was also the beginning of a vital journey. Speaking the truth marked the first step toward healing and reclaiming my life. It was a painful but empowering act, one that asserted my right to dignity and authenticity. Though I was vulnerable and raw, I was not defeated. The courage I summoned that day became a beacon lighting the path forward, guiding me through the shadows toward a future where honesty and strength would prevail. This moment of revelation, raw, public, and unflinching, will forever remain a pivotal turning point in my life. It was the moment when silence broke, when truth was set free, and when I chose to stand tall amidst the ruins of betrayal. It was painful to speak it aloud, but necessary to begin the healing process. From that shattered altar, I moved forward, wounded but determined, broken but hopeful, ready to rebuild a life founded on truth, respect, and self-love. The revelation of the affair instantly shattered the joyful atmosphere of our wedding, dissolving the carefully built illusion of perfect harmony and sending shockwaves through the crowd. What had been an afternoon filled with laughter, hope, and warm embraces suddenly morphed into a scene thick with tension, disbelief, and heartbreak. The fragile veneer of celebration cracked beyond repair, exposing raw emotions and fractured relationships beneath. Almost immediately, an uncomfortable silence settled over the guests. A silence weighted with confusion and sorrow. The earlier joyous chatter ceased, replaced by murmurs and tentative whispers as guests struggled to process the sudden rupture of happiness. Some covered their mouths in disbelief. Others exchanged shocked glances, their eyes brimming with tears or clouded with shock. The murmuring quickly escalated into small, hesitant conversations, attempts to understand what had just unfolded in front of so many eyes. My bride, who had until moments before embodied the vision of radiant joy, was now pale and trembling. Her eyes, once bright with emotion and promise, flickered nervously, trying to find some foothold in the stunned crowd around her. The bridesmaid, once smiling and poised, now avoided eye contact entirely, retreating into an uncomfortable silence marked by visible shame. The trust they had built with everyone present, family, friends, strangers, had been irrevocably broken in that raw, exposed moment. Guests shifted uneasily, their stances betraying the emotional turmoil bubbling beneath the polite facades. The sense of shared celebration fractured, replaced by fragmented groups hesitant to engage. A social awkwardness born from shock and the need to absorb difficult truths. The joyous occasion had morphed into an emotional crucible, where loyalty, sympathy, and judgment intertwined in complex, often unspoken ways. Some of our closest friends approached me quietly, offering reassuring touches, sympathetic smiles, and whispered words of support. Their presence was a lifeline, reminding me I was not alone amidst the chaos. Many others, however, chose distance, perhaps unsure how to navigate the shifting dynamics or unwilling to face the painful reality that someone so close had betrayed the bonds of friendship and family on such a public stage. The collapse of the celebration extended beyond social discomfort. It touched deep emotional wounds for everyone involved. The day intended to unite hearts instead drew lines between allies and estranged parties. The fabric of relationships that had once felt unshakable began to unravel. Bonds were tested and, for some, broken beyond mending. Guests who had embraced as family moments earlier now faced the awkward necessity of choosing sides or withdrawing quietly to avoid further conflict. In this charged atmosphere, the symbolic act that was supposed to cement our union, the kiss, never happened. The moment became a suspended point of tension, overshadowed by the revelation and its aftermath. The altar that once stood as a symbol of new beginnings transformed into a stark reminder of fractured promises and lies. As the guests slowly began to depart, the lingering emotions hung heavy in the air. Some stayed behind, lingering in hushed conversations, trying to offer comfort or understand the magnitude of what had happened. Others slipped away quietly, their faces etched with sadness and disbelief. The wedding that had been months in the making was over in a fractured instant, leaving behind a trail of heartbreak and shattered expectations. The bride and bridesmaid withdrew from the scene almost immediately, their retreat adding to the sense of finality and loss. The warmth and camaraderie that had surrounded us evaporated, replaced by cold distance and the painful requirement of new boundaries. The epicenter of betrayal had fractured the social circle, dispersing once close connections into fragments. For me, the collapse of the celebration was both intensely painful and oddly clarifying. Though devastated by the breakdown of what should have been the happiest day of my life, the rawness of the moment forced a searing honesty. The facade was gone, and beneath it lay the hard truth that needed daylight. In the wreckage, there was a beginning, a painful but necessary reckoning and the first step toward healing. This moment marked the transformation from celebration to confrontation, from hope to harsh reality. It was the point at which the illusion dissolved, and the truth emerged in all its painful clarity. Though the aftermath was filled with hurt and loss, it was also an undeniable moment of awakening, a chance to understand, confront, and ultimately move beyond betrayal toward healing and renewal. The weeks and months following that devastating day were marked by a profound and tumultuous upheaval in my life, both emotionally and socially. The wedding, meant to be a celebration of love and unity, had ended in heartbreak and rupture, leaving me to navigate an unfamiliar and painful landscape. The aftermath was not simply a moment of shock, but an ongoing challenge, a complex process of confronting loss, betrayal, and the daunting task of reclaiming my identity. In the immediate fallout, the bridal party, especially the bride and her bridesmaid, vanished from my life. Their silence was a constant reminder of the wound they had inflicted. The close bonds of friendship and family support that had once surrounded me felt strained, as some friends and relatives struggled with their emotions, unsure whether to offer sympathy or distance themselves to avoid discomfort. Certain relationships shifted, and some friends quietly distanced themselves, a subtle but painful consequence of the fractured trust that reverberated through our shared circles. Emotionally, the storm inside me was overwhelming. Waves of grief crashed relentlessly against the shores of my heart. Grief not only for the betrayal itself but for the loss of the future I had hoped to build. There were moments when anger flared fiercely, fueled by the depth of the deception and a sense of profound injustice. At other times, numbness blanketed me, making it difficult to feel anything at all amid the chaos inside. Loneliness became an uninvited companion, even amidst the presence of loved ones, as I struggled to process the magnitude of what had been lost. In search of solace, I sought professional therapy, a refuge where I could confront my pain without judgment. Counseling sessions became a sanctuary where I could untangle the knotted threads of betrayal, self-doubt, and sorrow. Therapy forced me to face difficult truths and to begin the slow, non-linear work of rebuilding a shattered sense of self. With guidance, I learned to separate my intrinsic worth from the actions of others and to see that healing was possible even from the darkest wounds. Healing was a fractured and unpredictable journey. Some days brought clarity and strength, while others plunged me back into doubt and despair. Relearning how to trust both others and myself became a daily practice. I forged new boundaries to protect my emotional well-being and nurtured relationships that were grounded in honesty and respect. I reconnected to passions long neglected, finding moments of joy and meaning in creativity, nature, and the simple comforts of life. Opening up about my experience became a crucial part of my healing process. I shared my story with close friends and later found small support groups where others had faced betrayal and heartbreak. Speaking honestly helped dismantle the isolation and shame that often accompany such wounds. In those conversations, I realized that my pain, though deeply personal, was part of a shared human experience. The stories of others gave me strength and hope, proof that recovery and resilience were within reach. While the scars from that day remain, they no longer define me. I emerged from that painful chapter stronger, more self-aware, and deeply committed to embracing truth and authenticity in my life. The betrayal had tested my spirit but had not broken it. Instead, it became the crucible in which my resilience was forged, fostering empathy, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to self-respect. The collapse of the wedding marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with challenges but also opportunities for growth and renewal. I learned that healing is possible, even when the pain feels insurmountable, and that the future, though uncertain, could be shaped by hope, courage, and a commitment to truth. My journey forward was no longer about holding on to broken dreams, but about crafting a life rooted in honesty, respect, and genuine connection. The weeks and months that followed the revelation of betrayal were an intense journey of emotional upheaval, reflection, and transformation. The wedding that had been planned for so long ended abruptly, and with it went the illusions of love and happiness I had held on to. Suddenly, I found myself navigating the uncharted territory of heartbreak and betrayal amid the presence of friends and family who had been part of the celebration just days before. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of shifting relationships and fractured support. My bride and the bridesmaid, who had been a close friend, disappeared from my life almost overnight. Their silence was deafening. Attempts to reach out were met with avoidance or minimal communication. Friends and family members reacted in different ways. Some offered genuine comfort and stood by me, while others found themselves uncertain or hesitant, afraid to take sides or intrude on the raw emotions swirling around them. Some acquaintances quietly distanced themselves, unwilling or unable to engage with the difficult reality. Emotionally, I was overwhelmed by conflicting feelings. Grief washed over me in crashing waves, not just for the lost relationship but also for the future I had envisioned and now had to relinquish. Anger flared at times, fueled by the sheer betrayal and the heartbreak of being deceived by someone I had trusted implicitly. At other moments, numbness blanketed me, making it difficult to process or even fully feel the magnitude of the loss. The intense loneliness was profound, even in the company of supportive friends and family, because this kind of pain is solitary, existing in a space private to one's heart. Desperate for clarity and healing, I sought professional help. Therapy became a lifeline, a safe haven where I could explore my emotions honestly and without judgment. Through counseling, I began untangling the overwhelming feelings of betrayal, confusion, and self-doubt. I learned to separate my self-worth from the actions of others and took steps toward rebuilding my fractured identity. The path to healing was winding and fragile. Progress was often met with setbacks, but slowly I found strength and hope emerging from the dark. Rebuilding trust, both in others and in myself, required deliberate effort. I crafted new boundaries that protected my emotional well-being and recommitted to relationships rooted in honesty and respect. Rediscovering passions and hobbies I had neglected provided solace and helped restore a sense of purpose and joy. Each small step forward was a victory in reclaiming my life from the wreckage of betrayal. Sharing my story with trusted friends and supportive groups was another pivotal component of healing. Speaking openly about my experience helped dismantle the isolation and shame that often accompany infidelity. In connecting with others whose lives had been touched by betrayal, I found solidarity, understanding, and reassurance that healing is possible. These shared stories became a beacon of resilience and courage. The wounds left behind did not vanish, but I no longer let them dictate who I was or what I deserved. I emerged from the anguish stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. The betrayal had tested my spirit and resolve, but had ultimately fostered deeper empathy, dignity, and a commitment to living authentically. That painful chapter marked not just an ending but a new beginning, an opportunity to rebuild a future grounded in truth and self-respect. Though the road ahead was uncertain, it was illuminated by hope and the conviction that even after profound betrayal, genuine healing and happiness remain possible. The devastating betrayal and the public exposure of my bride's affair marked the end of one chapter in my life, but it also ignited the beginning of a profound and necessary journey toward reconstruction, healing, and rediscovery. Though the pain seemed overwhelming at first, it soon became a catalyst for transformation and personal growth, revealing a resilience within me that I had never fully realized. In the weeks and months following the wedding's collapse, I gradually learned to redefine my sense of self beyond the shadow of betrayal. The raw heartbreak I carried became a painful but powerful teacher, showing me the importance of authenticity, honesty, and self-love. I began to understand that my worth was not diminished by the actions of another, no matter how deeply they wounded me. This realization formed the foundation of my recovery, empowering me to release the burden of shame, guilt, and self-doubt. Rebuilding my life involved more than healing emotional wounds. It required reevaluating my values, expectations, and the relationships I chose to nurture. I embraced new boundaries that protected my well-being and fostered connections based on mutual respect and transparency. Friends who stood by me and supported my healing became pillars of strength, while those who faltered or abandoned me revealed themselves as less vital to my future. This process, while painful, clarified the true meaning of loyalty and companionship. Exploring passions and rediscovering personal interests played a crucial role in restoring my joy and purpose. Whether through creative outlets, nature, or quiet moments of reflection, I found ways to reconnect with myself beyond the pain. These small acts of nurturing became lifelines, reminding me of the beauty and potential life still held. The journey toward healing also involved forgiveness, both of others and of myself. Forgiveness was not about excusing betrayal, but about freeing myself from the corrosive grip of bitterness and anger. It allowed space for growth and the possibility of renewed hope. This process was gradual and often challenging, but it became a cornerstone of reclaiming peace and moving forward. In time, I opened my heart again to the possibility of love, this time grounded in authenticity and mutual respect. The painful lessons I had learned informed my choices and deepened my understanding of what a healthy, loving relationship should be. I approached new connections with cautious optimism and an unwavering commitment to honesty, knowing that true love could only thrive in the light of truth. The experience of betrayal and its aftermath transformed me into a person of greater empathy, strength, and self-awareness. It taught me that even amid profound loss, it is possible to rise with dignity and courage. My future would no longer be defined by the pain I endured but by the resilience I cultivated and the hope I embraced. That transformative journey, from the depths of heartbreak to the heights of renewal, became the most important chapter of my story. It reshaped my understanding of love, identity, and the power of truth. I emerged not broken, but reborn, ready to live fully, love deeply, and build a life anchored in integrity and grace. From the ashes of despair, I found a new beginning, and with it, the strength to face whatever the future holds.